Good morning, colleagues. It's a pity I couldn't be there in person with you today. I've just come back from Ethiopia, where I was interviewing scholarship alumni in the TIE project. And unlucky me, I picked up a bug and it's left me quite out of sorts. However, I didn't want you to lose out, so I'm quickly trying to record this presentation on Tuesday afternoon so you have something to work with and you have some materials that you can refer to. I'm sure Andreas will share these slides with you, share this recording with you. And what my presentation focuses on today is how we can use AI as a tool to assist us with our writing and to help us find some literature and also how to go about analyzing it. I've tried to find a range of free tools that can show you what's possible. And so with that, let's get going. I'll start and share my screen. Okay. So before I get into the main focus of my presentation, I thought, given that this is an AI talk, I think it'll be important for me to talk to you about some of the recent AI news. AI moves very quickly, and it's important that you try to keep track of what's actually going on. So firstly, Elon Musk is actually suing Sam Altman and OpenAI together. Musk was actually one of the founders of OpenAI, and he claims he came up with the name OpenAI itself. And he's saying that this company was meant to be a non-profit, and now it's largely owned by Microsoft, and so it's become this profit-based entity. So Musk is also stating that OpenAI is close to building AGI, artificial general intelligence, and it's possible that it might have already done so. So here Elon Musk is arguing that this is really a dangerous moment in human history, and we're at this turning point where the machine could start to take over. So with that in mind, Elon Musk is then calling for a jury trial. So he hopes he'll make a lot of news, have a big splash. So this is a space that we really have to be watching in the coming weeks rather than months. Secondly, we're also seeing that Google is trying to play catch up with ChatGPT, and they've then released Google Gemini, which has now replaced their Google Bard offering. And based on some of the metrics that they've published, their higher end model, Gemini Ultra, we find is just about as strong as GPT-4. Thirdly, on Monday night, one of the other competitors to OpenAI, Anthropic, they released Claude version 3 very quickly after Claude version 2 was released about 2 months ago. And based on the metrics that they're releasing, they're saying that their models have now surpassed the capabilities of GPT-4. And then lastly, those last 2 points that I have here, both Microsoft and Google have now integrated AI into their Office products. And there are costs involved, but it's accessible to just about everyone right now. So I mentioned this last year that AI is going to start moving fast and you're going to find it everywhere. And these are some of the results that we're seeing now. There's this huge battle that's going on about who's going to have control, who's going to have the best tools, and this is what we're seeing. Yeah. Beyond that, I think we also need to start thinking about our privacy and how we protect our own intellectual capital. And so with that, I've just prepared this slide to share some ideas about the do's and don'ts about how we should go about using AI and what we should be aware of. If we just talk about ChatGPT and consider that perhaps as a proxy for all of these AI tools, you should understand that everything that you upload into ChatGPT, the free version, which is 3.5 or ChatGPT Plus, gets introduced into their training data. And so potentially, after that information gets processed by their internal computations, it's possible that somebody could access the information that you upload if they provide a specific enough prompt. So you've got to think about what type of information you're actually uploading into these AI systems. And is it something that you want to protect? ChatGPT Teams is a new initiative that OpenAI has launched. And here they're claiming that they will protect your data and it won't be included into their training data, but it's claimed, so we don't know how accurate that is. And then there's similar issues if you use the OpenAI API data, where we're not sure what will be used in the training data. These examples that I talk about with ChatGPT apply to all of the others. So whether you're using Claude or Bing or Bard or Perplexity, the same issues apply. So what should you do? When you do upload information into these chatbots, anonymize your inputs, take away important names and things that you think should be protected. Try to generalize your queries as best you can. Be vague about location, so you're not giving away where somebody is living. And then try and protect your identity as best you can. On the don't side, what you shouldn't do, try not to share personal information. Don't share secrets, don't share company secrets, don't share things that are important to you because it's possible that it could be accessed by others. Don't share links to personal issues, don't share your personal profile information and so on. Try not to use brand names or trademarks. And then the last one is don't share valuable IP. And so what's valuable is really a personal uh, point of view, and you've got to try and figure out what's valuable to you that you don't end up sharing it publicly in these spaces. Beyond that, I thought it's important for me to try and update the slide. You might have seen this last year at some point where I was trying to speak to some of the chatbots that are out there right now and speak to the main ones that are making the most progress. I've tried to update this with recent information so that it's kind of live and speaking to some of the new features. So here I'm comparing the free version of ChatGPT versus the paid version of ChatGPT versus what's been made available by Microsoft in their Copilot offerings compared to what Google is offering with Gemini. Then you have Anthropic, which has now released Claude, and that's also available. And then you have two other tools called Perplexity.ai and Poe.com. So with ChatGPT, the free version, this is where you can upload and have a prompt that can process about 16,000 tokens. So a token is not actually a word, it's a shorter condensed version of a word, if I could call it that. The rough maths that applies with tokens and words is that about 1,000 words equates to about 750 words. So if we're talking about 16,000 tokens with the free version of ChatGPT, it means that it can process about 12,000 or so words in a prompt. So when you're capturing your prompt, you can upload information into ChatGPT, the free one, that's up to that, about 12,000 limits. And if you think an average paper is around 7,000, 8,000 words, you potentially could upload an entire paper into the free version of ChatGPT and ask it questions about that paper. The important point here is that ChatGPT free version is not connected to the internet, so it's not live, and you don't have some of the extra features which you see in the paid version. The paid version can now process up to 125,000 tokens, so it's really been uh, um, increased in capacity. It allows you to analyze documents. You can upload documents into your prompt. It has features called GPTs. So this has allowed you to build a custom GPT specific to a particular set of information. It can do various forms of data analysis. It can draw pictures and understand what the picture actually represents. And it can do something similar with audio files as well. Microsoft has adopted the GPT-4 model, but it's made that available in a really more uh, condensed version. So whereas you can process 125,000 tokens in ChatGPT 4 and the Plus account on Microsoft Copilot, that's copilot.microsoft.com, there your prompt is limited to about 2,000 characters. But it can do something similar with accessing the internet and processing images and so on. In the paid version, if you spend $30 a month on Microsoft 365, you will find that Copilot is now integrated directly into Office. Um, and so you can now get it to summarize your emails. It can look up documents that is in your OneDrive and do a lot of complicated things there. So that's quite impressive what they've been able to do with that, but it does cost you $30 in addition to having a Microsoft 365 license. With Google Gemini, now this is the counter product to ChatGPT. And so if you go to gemini.google.com, I believe, you can have a conversation with that chatbot. Um, the free version of Google Gemini only allows you to work with about 1,000 tokens, so much less than the free version of ChatGPT. But in the paid version, if you pay about $20 a month, you can upload up to 1.5 million tokens. So this is several books that could be uploaded here. Um, that it could then process in one chat exchange. It can do various multimodal activities, so it can work with images and audio and so on, and it can also analyze documents, but that's all in the paid version. Similar issues exist with Anthropic's Claude, and the free version, however, allows you to work with 100,000 tokens, so that's about 75,000 words. So Claude in the free version is perhaps the most powerful chatbot that is available to the public, and that might be the one that you want to work with. That allows you to upload long documents. And in the paid version, it's now starting to do more complicated stuff where it can do quantitative analysis. It has built-in agents, which seem quite impressive, and I want to learn more about what's possible there. And in that version, that was released on Monday, so not much is known about what's possible there. Then the last two, Perplexity and Poe.com. Perplexity has a free version which also allows you to upload documents, but the token size of your chat is quite limited here. It limits you to about 2,000 tokens. And it has various bot agents, so it can link to GPT 3.5, it can link to Google Gemini, Claude, and some of the open source tools which are also being made available, which I haven't shared on this slide. But you can do quite a bit with Perplexity, and so I'd encourage you to have a look at that and see the different variations that it allows you to do, like things like searching on Reddit, for example, for information. And it also tries to provide hyperlinks to the source of the information, so you know where this is coming from. Poe.com is doing something similar to Perplexity. You'll find it's actually a little bit cheaper than the others, and you'll notice it's priced in rands and not in dollars. And here you can also access multiple bot engines like you can in Perplexity. So yeah, that it's also a powerful tool, and it's something worth looking into. I want to now get into the nuts and bolts about prompting and get into some details about how to write a good prompt so that you can get the best out of the AI system. So importantly, when you write a good prompt, something to remember is that you need to give it a structure. You need to specify how it should go about presenting the information that it's going to produce to you. And where possible, we should upload information that will be useful in writing the prompt that will be used here. So as you do this, as it starts to generate information, it's important that you critically engage with the output that's coming out. Does it make sense? Is it referring to the information that you're uploading? Is it hallucinating particular points? So you've got to critically engage with all of the different points that are being shared by the chatbot as it starts generating its output. And then the very important point is the more specific you are in your prompt, the better will be the output, meaning that each instruction gives it some guidance in how it should collect information and structure that information into the format that it's presenting to you. So if you can tell it how it should be doing something, it will be better for the quality of your output. And another way to think about this, which is now featuring in the way we structure prompting, is by applying Daniel Kahneman's machinery of thought. He wrote this book a few years ago, and it talks about different forms of thinking. And I want to distinguish between systems 1 level of thinking and systems 2 level of thinking. With systems one level of thinking, it's very immediate. Um, you're having a knee-jerk response to something and you say, let's just do that. And you don't give it much description, you don't give it much thought about how you should be conducting that particular exercise. It's you just quickly responding to something that's happening. Systems tool form of thinking is where you're a bit more deliberate. You're thinking out how you should carry out a particular exercise. You're listing the steps that should be applied. You're thinking about the various forms of computation that needs to be applied. You're giving it some more subjective thinking, and you're trying to have more control in the output. And this this distinction between system one and systems two is important when you think about how you structure a prompt. What that actually means is, let's think about systems one, and we'll use the example of memo writing. And basically, a prompt for when you're applying systems one thinking is just something that's really bare bones. You have an idea, you want to write a memo, and so your prompt is, write a memo to my boss asking him to approve the purchase of books for 2,000 Rand, something odd like that. And so you haven't given it much detail, and you've just decided to stick this prompt in ChatGPT or your preferred chatbot, and you see what comes out, and maybe you'll tweak it after that, but you haven't given it much more thought than that. And so what that actually translates into when you stick that prompt into ChatGPT, you'll see that in this example, it's now said, request for approval, purchase of books, dear boss's name. I hope this message finds you well. I'm writing to request your approval of the purchase of essential books totaling 2,000 Rand. And so now it's filling up the space. It's giving you a full letter, but it's got no structure. There's no context to it. It doesn't know who the boss is. It doesn't know why you've needed to purchase this books. It's coming up with reasons, but are these reasons actually relevant to, to the issue that you're dealing with? If you apply systems to thinking to memo writing, there's a different form that your prompt could take on. And the analogy I make is that the difference between systems one and systems two thinking is the difference between a stick figure and a well drawn out pencil sketch, which you see in this example. So if you're applying systems thinking, your prompt now becomes much more detailed, and you're applying uh, that guidance that I shared in the earlier slide, where you give it an instruction, you give it some structure of how it should apply that, and you give it some information about what's useful in this context. So here we're wanting to write a memo. So an important part of prompt writing is giving the chatbot a role that it needs to play. And so if you say hashtag role, pound sign role, you're then indicating to the chatbot that this is a heading that you want to now have in your prompt. And whatever follows after that heading is then related to the description of that heading. So hashtag role means that the role that the chatbot is playing is that it's an expert memo writer. Hashtag mission, craft a detailed memo for the CEO to approve the procurement of books. So you're giving it a task that it needs to do. That's its mission. Hashtag approach, you're explaining how it needs to carry out the task of writing this memo. So you're saying here, persuasively articulate the necessity and benefits of book purchases, ensuring alignment with organizational goals and compliance with legal and financial constraints. So there's some guidance here. And then you give it some structure. You'd say the purpose that you explain what the purpose should be. And so it needs to summarize here the key arguments of the memo. It must then have a background and motivation section. And then you explain what should be in that background section. You explain the financial implications, and the key issues here is that the book will cost 2,000 Rand. You explain the legal implications, and in this instance, this purchase requires special CEO consent. And then you have a recommendation, which you want your memo to conclude with. And then here you ask it to summarize the central recommendation of this memo. And so what that looks like is that your output then becomes quite structured. It's driven by the context that you shared with it. And you then have the opportunity to edit it after it generates that and it becomes more thoughtful. So if you click this link with what I'm sharing you, you'll come to this web page of mine where I've done this example. And so I've copied that prompt out. Um, I'll just zoom in a bit more here so you can see this. Um, so I've copied that prompt in, and now you'll start to see that the memo that it generates is much more um, refined. So it's stating who this should be addressed to. It's coming up with a subject. It's defining the purpose, the background, giving you some more details here. All of this you can then go about editing. Um, it gives you a section for financial implications, legal implications, and then recommendation. And all of this follows the guidance that we offered upfront, where we stated this is the structure that you need to follow, and we'll see it now is following that advice. So that's the difference between systems 1 and systems 2. Systems 1 being the stick figure, systems 2 being this advanced pencil sketch. That's a way to understand the difference. The next thing I want to do is talk about how you can use AI to find literature, find papers, use it in the work that we do. And so I want to first talk about heuristica.ca or heuristi.ca, or you could call it heuristica if you like. And I found this tool, it's a free one. If you get into heuristi.ca, log in here, create an account with them, you'll find it's great. It's a great tool to generate mind maps. So in the example that I've showed you on the screen, I was exploring decent work, and now it can start drawing out these diagrams and using AI to try and give you more information about all of this. So let me jump to heuristi.ca to show you how this would work. We'll go to the next slide. So let's say the topic that I want to explore relates to decent work. I would punch that in here, press explore. That's now given me this item, decent work. And now I could try and let's say, here's my options. I can try and elaborate on what decent work means. So it's now looking at what decent work is, and it's coming up with some sort of definition for decent work. Decent work refers to employment that provides fair wages, security, social protection, and so on. So I'll add that to the exploration. You'll see it's now starting to connect that. I could go on and see, okay, what else is this related to? Let me think about what are the concepts that are linked to decent work. And so I'll click on concepts and ask it to find similar concepts. It's now looking into decent work, and it's finding a range of concepts. Fair labor practices, I like that. Living wages, labor rights, worker empowerment, let's say sustainable employment, job stability, for argument's sake. I'll click those, and what you'll see is that it's linked all of these in here. See, it's linked them to the elaborate. I could get them. I could delete them. Let me delete these again. I could link these then to the decent work central node to make this diagram a little more interesting. Concept. Right. Click that. Concepts. Similar concepts. And then we'll carry out. Okay. So as you see, you can go on, you can now start to play with this, and it now helps you think about a particular topic, figure out what's important, and then it draws a map which would then be useful to you. So you can see it very, very quickly. You can get this complicated map which gives you more context about what the whole idea of decent work is. So this is a free tool, it's very powerful, and it's one that I would recommend, heuristi.ca. The next tool I want to talk about is illicit.com. So with illicit.com, there's a free version and there's a paid version. If you want to get the paid version, you're going to have to pay $5 a month. And then that gives you a few more features than what you can get in the free version. The free version is limited to a certain set of literature and so on. But if you go to elicit.com, log on, create an account here, the difference between elicit.com and other tools for finding research papers is that instead of searching based on keywords, you're here searching based on a research question. So it's searching based on the meaning of the question. So in an example that I'd like to share, here I am on illicit work, and let's go further into this concept of decent work. And so I'm going to ask, what are the drivers of decent and dignified work in South Africa? So I've already asked the question here. And what you'll see that it does is that it looks at the first 4 papers which comes up. And based on those 4 papers, it gives you an answer to your question. So here I asked, what are the drivers? And it says the drivers of decent and dignified work in South Africa are influenced by a range of factors. Then they referred to the work of Karim from 2012, referred to the work of Rapatsa 2014, Viljoen, and so on. And what you can also do here is that you can then actually find the paper that's related to that. So if you look at the list of papers that's coming out, they're giving you answers that are linked, answers related to your question, which has been sourced from this paper. And so you get a sense of whether this paper is going to be useful to me in answering my question. And if you like this paper, you could then click on it, you get more information about it, but you could also go and access that PDF that it was providing. So here I could go download that PDF and get it. So that Elicit is a very powerful tool, and it's one that I would recommend. The next tool is called SciSpace, and SciSpace is very similar to Elicit. It does the same thing. Instead of summarizing 4 papers, it summarizes 5 papers in the top. So it's also based on the same research question approach, where it's looking for meaning, but you'll find that it's more expensive. And I'm not sure if it does offer you better analysis than Elicit does, but it's something worth checking out. You'll see if you get a team plan, it'll cost you $18 a month. They charge you less if you get an annual account, and then $20 a month for an individual plan. So that's just about as much as ChatGPT Pro account. So you'd think long and hard whether you want that here. SciSpace, somehow, even though it's called SciSpace, you'll notice that its URL is typeset.io, which is strange. But if you go to typeset.io, you ask the question, you get access to the answer, you can then see the paper. But what it also does is for each paper, it can start to generate a table. And so in this one, it's giving you some insights that are related to this particular paper, which was related to the question. And the TLDR means too long, didn't read, tries to summarize this paper into really just a key sentence or two, so it gives you a sense about what this is. But it's another way for you to then go about accessing literature. So typeset.io or SciSpace, it's an interesting one to try out. The next tool I want to speak about is connected papers. So if you go to connectedpapers.com, on the free version, you can generate 5 free graphs a month. And so in this tool, what you can do, if you search for a particular keyword and you press build a graph, it will then generate a graph that identifies the authors or generates some of the key literature that's related to your particular research that you're looking for. You could either input the DOI for a particular paper or the title of a paper also, and then you could identify literature and authors that are related to that particular paper as well. So that's also an interesting one that you could try out. And these graphs are actually great because it gives you a sense about all the different literature that is then being produced in a particular area. So let's go have a look at what that looks like. Just move this out of the way. Okay, so here we are at connected papers, and the example that I want to look at is based on decent work and South Africa. So I'm using keywords of decent work in South Africa. I'm going to press bold graph. You can see you could also punch in the DOI, you could put in the paper's title and other options here, and that will help you produce this graph. So let's press build that graph, and you get a sense of how this interface looks. So once you do that, once I've punched in decent work in South Africa, it's going to find papers that are related to decent work in South Africa. So I then have a look at these papers. Do they look interesting? Are they the ones that I'm looking for? So let's, for argument's sake, say I like the second paper, Development of a Long-Term Care Economy in Gauteng, South Africa, towards decent work. So we click on that, and it's doing some work in the background. It's drawing up a graph. Let's see what does it do. We'll wait for it. Okay, so now it's got the original paper, and what you'll see here is that it's now starting to show you different pieces of different literature that has come out linked to this idea. And if you hover over each of um, these nodes, you can start to see which paper it's referring to, and so you get a sense of who all of these different papers are. And so here's all of the different papers that are coming up, and if you click on them here as well, it gives you more information there. So connected papers, nice way to try and visualize the literature that's coming up in a particular link to a particular idea or particular paper. Okay, the next one is a little related to connected papers, but this one is called Research Rabbit. If you go to researchrabbitapp.com, here you could now look at the links between papers and the people who write the papers, the authors. So here you could choose one particular paper, and then it starts to draw these maps as well, where you can now find relevant literature. And you'll notice here there isn't a paid version, so this is completely free. So we'll go to Research Rabbit. And so the example that I'm using here is I've uploaded a paper. This one was Decent Work, Concepts and Indicators. So you click on that paper, it gives you some information about that paper. You could then click on, let's do this from scratch. So here's the paper. It tells you a little bit about that paper. If you click on similar work, it will now start identifying the different papers which are related to that, and you start to get a sense of who the relevant literature, where the relevant literature is coming from. So you could also look at it based on a network, like, or you could look at it based on the timeline, start to see where this literature is coming from. You could analyze it by first author, last author, and then you could click on that paper and then look at the references within that paper. So it's very useful, and it's an interesting way to now start analyzing a particular topic or analyzing the literature that's related to a particular set of work. So you click on that paper, you could also look at the authors that are mentioned here. Look at the references. So you can play around with this, but I'm just saying, look at researchrabbitapp.com. Very useful, very powerful. The next one that I want to share is Explain Paper. So if you go to www.explainpaper.com, you'll find here's a tool that allows you to try and understand a bit more about a paper. So you upload a paper into this, and in the free version, if you summarize a particular issue, it will then try and explain that issue to you. If you get the paid version and you pay $12, that will try and summarize the entire paper for you, but it's going to use GPT 3.5, which has a weaker reasoning ability than GPT-4. If you use the GPT-4 one, it's going to cost you $20. If we have a look at how this works in practice, we'll go to this website. So here I've already uploaded a paper, and this is looking at learning and knowledge transfer in Africa and China, JVs. And so I could then highlight a particular issue. You'll see it says Africa, China, JVs. I want to know what that means. And I can press explain. And now it starts to give me an explanation about what that concept is. So if you're trying to work through a paper and it's got some complex terminology, this is a nice way to try and unpack it. And so then you can go through this and understand what that is and so on. So explainpaper.com is useful. And if you get the paid version, you can get a bit more out of this tool as well. The next example I want to talk about is how you can use AI within your qualitative analysis. So there's been some new updates with Atlas TI. For most of last year, there was a version 23 that came out, and in version 23, it had integrated AI coding into the system. But with version 23, you didn't have much control about how you could do the coding. So you would upload your paper, and then you would say AI coding, and it would effectively just start analyzing everything, and it would give you maybe not millions, but thousands of codes in one paper, and so it becomes very difficult to analyze that. Version 24 is trying to be a bit more intentional. I haven't really tested it out. I just came across this very recently. But in a nutshell, I just want to show you how it works. So if you look for the intentional AI coding, you can then give it a particular issue that you're looking for. And then when you put that issue in, it starts to generate particular questions that would be relevant to that particular issue. And you could then choose if you want that particular sub-question to be included in the coding that it does. So I've just chosen the first one in this example, and then I let it run over a few papers. So I want to show you what that actually looks like when it runs this coding over those papers. So once it's done that, once it's run that coding, you'll see it will end with identifying all the different codes that it's applied, and it gives you a report about what the top codes were. But let's have a look at Atlas. There is Atlas TI. So here's Atlas TI. I've uploaded a stack of documents which is relevant to my PhD that I'm working on at the moment. And what I did is I took that particular issue and I got it to start coding this. And I think the question I was looking for was, what are the motivations for partnerships between China and Africa? And in this paper, Africa Shenzhen, China's special economic zones in Africa, it's now starting to try and code this paper, and is looking for extracts within this paper that are related to motivations for partnerships. And so you'll see my paper is now got some coding in there. And so I can now start to see where these examples have come from. And so there's various levels of detail that are being applied here. So you can see that it's tried to identify where there are examples of that. So you could now then go into the code results and then pull out a report. So where did that go now? Yeah, you could then start to generate a report, and then this could then feed into your analysis. So you could export that to Excel and then start to use it. But this is what it would look like at the end. Let me show you your options that you have in Atlas TI now. So you have your papers that are here. If you go to, where is it? Analyze. Oh, you click on the paper, search and code. If you pressed AI coding and you chose a particular paper, and if you say start coding, it's going to now analyze this paper and look for every possible code that would be related here, not linked to a particular issue. So that's going to take some time. Here they're saying one paper would take approximately 6 minutes to work through. I don't want to wait 6 minutes, so I'm not going to do that. If I want to do intentional coding, um, I could then press intentional coding, identify the document I want to work with, um, and then here I could capture my question. So um, um, I could say partnerships between Africa and China if I want to be broad. And then I press next. It's saying the text contents of the selected documents will be uploaded to OpenAI for processing. AI coding is currently a beta feature, and it's just asking you to agree to those requirements. You do that, and this is where it now starts to generate sub-questions related to that. And so you could choose which one is relevant to you. So for, let's say, I'm going to look at this economic issue. How do partnerships between Africa and China impact local economies in African countries? And you'll find out um, what is relevant. So if you press start coding here, it's going to start processing that document and it will work through it. I'm not going to wait for that because I've already shown you what the output looks like, but that's how you would um, do that particular task. Another feature that you have um, here is AI summaries and Atlas 24, even Atlas 23, I believe, if you chose the document, it will then generate um, a summary for you. And so it'll take a few minutes, but it will then generate a summary, which you'll attach at the bottom of your list of documents, which would be the summary of the document that you chose. So Atlas TI um, version 23 and version 24, very powerful, and it's something that we have licenses for um, already. So if you contact IT, they'll be able to set this up on your machine. Let's go back to my slides. Where are they? The next idea I want to share with you is how you could use a chatbot to to produce a summary, but to produce a summary that's got quite a bit of detail behind it. And so I like to ask a chatbot to perform a précis writing exercise when I want to know what the paper is trying to do without needing to go through all the details of that paper. So what I would recommend you use it either be Claude.ai or Perplexity.ai. I think you could even use Poe.com for this, for you to then upload a paper and then get it to generate some output based on that paper. How that would work, let me see if I have an example here for you. Yeah, so here I am in Perplexity.ai. I've uploaded a prompt here. And so here my prompt basically says, role, you are a précis writer, you have a mission, review the attached paper on Chinese FDI, and perform a précis writing exercise on the paper detailing its background, research question, methodology, findings, and gaps in the study. Produce a markdown formatted report using the headings background, research question, methodology, findings, and gaps. Let me see if I can get a paper. I thought I had one here already. Chinese FDI. I will just drag and drop that particular paper. You'll notice I did say something about the paper that I was interested in. And so I've uploaded it here. Once you've uploaded it, you press run, and this will now analyze that paper and give you a very quick summary by performing that précis writing exercise on that paper. So this is a good tip for you if you want to learn more about this. The key thing to remember though is I think with Perplexity .ai, I think you can do this 5 times in a day. With Claude, I think you can do it about 5 times within a 3-hour stretch or something like that. It changes based on whatever the load is experienced by the Anthropic servers, but this is powerful if you want to get to understand a paper very quickly. Yeah, let's see, what do we have next? Okay, the next exercise I want to show you is getting quite advanced, and this requires you to understand what an API key is. So Google Gemini, the new release from Google, they've provided an API, which is an application programming interface. And this API allows you to ask up to 60 questions to the Google Gemini server in under 1 minute. So you can ask 60 different questions. So that's quite powerful if you think about trying to do something at scale. And I want to show you an example of how I use this, particularly within a spreadsheet, when I know that I'm going to be repeating a particular exercise over and over again. Uh, and I wanted to try and ask that same question over different sets of information. So to do this, you need to know how to get uh, a Google Gemini API. So if you press this link, it will take you to the AI Studio in Google, and then that will allow you to get what's called an API key. Once you get that API key, if you go to a Google Sheet and you install a plugin called AI Assist for Gemini in Sheets and Docs, and if you paste that API key in, you have access to the Google Gemini system, and then you can start to use Gemini within your Google spreadsheet. And then you can ask up to 60 questions within a minute. So let's go to the AI Studio to get that key. So what you could do, if you don't remember the link that I spoke about, you could just Google it, and then you would find AI google.dev. That would basically bring you here. And once you're here, you then create an API key. I've already done this. I'm not sure what it's going to do. Okay, I think it's not going to work for me because I've already created one. But if you hadn't created one, you'd be able to then copy a key from here. You'd copy it from here, and then you'd go to your spreadsheet. And so on Google Sheets, you could then add an extension. And so if you looked for Gemini, let me just type in Gemini, and you'll see AI for Assist Gemini in Sheets comes up. That's the plugin. I've already installed it, but if you installed this on your machine, you would then be able to input the API key. So the way you do that is you go to, or you open it, and then you set the API key, which is here. I've already done it, but then it allows you to use the Gemini engine within your analysis. So here what I've done, remember that Tracy exercise I just spoke about? I've done it on some literature that I've been working on. So I've got about 4 papers here. Here's the file names of those papers. It's a bit difficult to make it. I should have shared the title of it. But for each one of those, I had then asked a chatbot to provide a précis writing summary about that paper. So now I've got 4 summaries about these papers, and I can now start to try and figure out what's going on in all of this. So what you would do, the way I've been doing it, you might have a different approach, but if you understand how how to use Gemini, this will start to make sense. So what I do is I write a question, and so in this particular example, I'm asking, is the public sector mentioned in this extract? If so, what institution is it? Only refer your answer to the following text. I say that because I want it not to hallucinate an answer. I want it to read what's being provided here and then do that. So to put that into action, if you look at, can I zoom in here? But if you look at the formula, it is equals Gemini, open brackets, C1 and space B2. So here C1 is the question that I just asked, right? And B2 is this précis summary of this particular paper. And so that's the formula. And here's the answer to it. Yes, the public sector is mentioned in the text, The conclusion suggests that the Republic of Uzbekistan should consider international experiences in anti-corruption strategies, emphasizing the improvement of public service provisions through a one-stop shop principle. So that's interesting, and it's now starting to answer questions about each of these papers. So I can now copy that formula um, and run it across my data. I'll just get this back to 100%. So I'm going to copy that formula, run it. And now you'll see that it is asking that question to these papers. So here on this one, it said, no, it wasn't there. But on the final one, it says, yes, the public sector is mentioned in the extract. The institution is mentioned in is the United Nations Public Service Award. So that's something that's interesting. I could now flag that and know that these papers are something that's relevant to me if I want to understand more about the public sector in the context of this work. All of this is related to my PhD work now, so it might not make sense to you, but I hope you understand or follow the process that I've just applied. Cool. So those are the examples that I've got for you. I want to conclude with um, two sources where you could go and find more information about this. So one is a guy by the name of Mushtaq Bilal. You can find him on LinkedIn, and he posts just about every day, and he's sharing new ideas about how you can use AI in your writing, how you can use it to improve the way you work. So look up Mushtaq Bilal. He does try to sell a service about certain things, but he does share very many interesting insights into this. And then the second person that you could look up is Dr. Andrew Stapleton. So he has a channel on YouTube, and he's putting out new information quite often, and he shows you much of the examples that I've shared with you today. I've learned from Dr. Stapleton here. So very interesting work that he does share online, and I hope it's something that you find useful. Thank you, colleagues. That was quite a bit from me. I hope this exercise has been useful. The benefits of having a recording is that you can rewind and go back and try and find out more of that information. I know I did it quite fast because I tried to get through many different potential tools as possible, but if you pause and go back, you could find the information that you look for. I'm going to try and be at home tomorrow, so I am going to be online. It's just I do need to try and get some rest, but if you do need to contact me, you can reach out, WhatsApp, email, Teams. Yeah, I'm available. But good luck, colleagues. I hope all goes well, and we'll see you soon. Cheers. Bye-bye.